right. Well, I'm going to start with just a few, intro housekeeping rules. Thank you everyone again for being here. It's wonderful to have you join our webinar today. This is our free MCAT workshop for the Psych section of the MCAT. So just a couple housekeeping rules. Just keep in mind this webinar is being recorded. It's going to be about 45 minutes. We will set aside time in the middle and the end to go through your questions as well. So just as a little bit of background information, Inspira Advantage is a globally recognized admissions consulting and test prep firm with over 16 years of experience. So we help students gain admission into top graduate healthcare programs. So students applying to medical school, residency programs, dental school, vet school, PA school, and overall we have a 98% acceptance rate. So we really believe in starting early, which is why we offer pre-health advising for college freshmen. So our team helps students to build a tailored academic timeline, including course selection and GPA strategy. We help students find impactful experiences like their research, shadowing, clinical and non-clinical volunteering, extracurriculars, leadership roles to help you create a strong standout profile and make sure your undergraduate experiences check all the boxes that top med schools are looking for. So these steps are going to lay a strong foundation to differentiate applicants and make them leave a strong impression on admissions. So in addition, we also have an amazing tutoring team here. All of our tutors are 99th percentile test takers. We offer one-on-one personalized test prep for the MCAT. So with diagnostic tests, custom study plans, and interim progress tracking, students see score increases of an average of 15 points on their MCAT, and our 48 and 60-hour programs even include a 515 score guarantee. So once it's time to apply, our all-inclusive application programs offer unlimited support through your entire application cycle. So this includes crafting a personal narrative and school list, perfecting your personal statement and secondary essays with unlimited edits, and providing interview prep, scholarship guidance, and waitlist strategy. So we're by our students' side until they receive their acceptance. And our goal is simple. We aim to create the most competitive candidates and applications, ensuring our students shine in a competitive admissions landscape. So if you'd like to learn more about it, we do offer free personalized consultations. We can do that over the phone or Zoom, or you can always reach out via email as well. So wherever you are in your application process, or if you have very personalized questions that you'd like some more time with, we're here to help. So with that being said, I'd love to just go through what we're hoping to cover today in this webinar and introduce our speaker to you. Again, we're going to go through how to tackle each MCAT question. So learn how to master the Psych section with expert tips. Optimize your MCAT study strategy, learn how to incorporate the Psych prep into your MCAT study schedule, and then advice from our MCAT expert. So our panelist is going to walk you through tips that are specifically geared toward that Psych section. We already covered a little bit about our background, so I'd love for you to meet our panelists today. Lois, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, everybody. I'm Lois. I am a fourth-year med student at Harvard Med, and I've been an admissions counselor with Inspira for a few years now. And I'm happy to help navigate or help you guys walk through today's session. So first, we'll talk about one of the big secrets for achieving over 515 or more on the MCAT. And a big undervalued section is mastering the psychology and sociology section. It's high yield largely because it's 1/3 of the MCAT, so it's still a large chunk. or accounts for 1/3 of one of the MCAT's behavioral focus, making it a very, very important section. And most students I find will focus mostly in memorization, but actually there's a lot of application and critical thinking where you have to distinguish certain concepts from others. So not just like defining them, but being able to distinguish, compare and contrast, and then apply them when you see some certain questions. So it can be a little bit tricky, but today we'll work through some key tips. Okay. Why the Psych Soc section feels easy, but it isn't. Psych Soc does have the highest average raw score amongst like MCAT sections, but it also means that any small mistake can drop your percentile rankings. And unlike CARS, it's predictable, but it is tricky. You can sort of predict what types of questions and what type of concepts are going to be asked, but the passengers will often disguise these concepts using confusing language, making recognition and application a really, really important skill to develop. And then many students just sort of overestimate their readiness because they've sort of like read or skimmed that section or read some materials beforehand. But just because you're familiar with the concepts does not necessarily mean that you would be a master at applying them. So the practice then should focus on mastering the passage-based reasoning and application of the concepts that you learn when you read Psych Soc material. Okay, so the MCAT tests more than just your knowledge. So the Psych Soc section, like the other sections, does require real-time critical thinking skills. So unlike just like straightforward memorization, which is the first layer of remembering something, MCAT really wants you to think on your feet and truly apply the concepts that you've learned. So the Psych Soc concept specifically likes to blend multiple concepts, requiring you to really connect ideas from psychology and sociology and just research methods in general. And so the real challenge, as I mentioned before, really is not just recalling things, but being able to analyze the text, filter out things that aren't important, and then apply the concepts that you've read about in the scenarios in the passage. So there's a lot going on, essentially. There's a check-in moment now.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a great foundation. So just checking in with those that have joined us. This QR code on the screen, if you want to go ahead and scan that with your phone, it will take you right to our consultation page. So if you book a consultation, it's usually a 20-minute call. You will be meeting with myself or some other admission specialists on the team, but I'm happy to always answer the questions that you have here in the webinar. So feel free to drop those in the chat. But if you'd like more one-on-one time or to really deep dive your history with the MCAT, start kind of thinking through a study plan, would love to jump on a call with you and kind of walk you through that. Also, for any of our programs on our website, because you've attended this webinar today, you can apply that code right on your screen where it says 10 off web. That'll take 10% off any of the programs for you as well. So just making sure in the chat here. So I think we are good to continue on with our slides, but feel free to drop the questions in the chat and I'll go through them all at the end as well.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk more about rethinking your approach to Psych Soc. So as we mentioned earlier, just content review and memorizing won't get you to that 130 plus score. The core like underpinning of success in the Psych Soc section, as with many sections, is that you really need to understand how these concepts are applied in the real world, not just recalling their definitions. And honestly, the best way to do this is to just run through questions, because when you are actively recalling and applying, then you get to practice that habit more and more. And then the strategy, again, defines higher scores, identifying question patterns quickly and being able to anticipate the logic that the MCAT is putting before you. Is going to be a skill that you can really cultivate by repeating questions. Why high scorers dominate the Psych Soc section. So they think like the test writers do. So top scorers don't just sort of study the content, they analyze not just the answer, but they also think about the wrong answers and begin to understand how the MCAT structures questions to really trick test takers. And by that, you not only recognize why this answer is the right answer, but why this wrong answer can be misconstrued as the right answer. So when you are reviewing your exams, you don't just want to read the right answer, but also read the explanation for the other answers as well. High test takers also, or high scorers, also prioritize experimental design. So many of these psych-soc questions test study limitations, study variables, study biases, not just theories. So you really have to think about research and studies, how they're set up, what types of things go into them, what the variables look like. Are they categorical? Are they descriptors? And what kind of biases are also prevalent in these types of researches? So not just the theories behind them. And then they don't fall for familiarity bias. So just because a couple concepts look familiar, don't mean that they are the right answer. Again, you really want to understand not just why an answer is correct, but why these other incorrect answers can be misconstrued as the right answer. So high scorers, not just, they don't just check those other answers, but they can also usually find and verify their answers with answers in the passage as well. Evidence in the passage, yeah. Okay, let's think about the psychology behind MCAT question. So passages are designed to essentially distract you, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be as tricky, as hard. So the MCAT does add unnecessary details to the passage to make what actually can be a simple concept into a more tricky, complex concept. Similarly, so to combat this, high scorers, what they have learned to do is to really strip away all the unnecessary fluff and focus on what's needed to correctly answer the question. And to do that, you must understand, what are the key concepts that the MCAT wants me to understand in this so section, and everything else should feel like extra fluff or like inappropriately placed. And thinking about wrong answers, well, wrong answers are crafted to feel like they are right answers. So the test includes half-truth answers that sound correct, but don't fully match the question's logic or can't fully be validated by the text. The best strategy is to eliminate first. So which ones are the wrongest wrongs? And then never rush to the best sounding answer, eliminate the ones that are wrong or that feel the most wrong. And that can help you narrow down to which ones are the more likely answers. Okay, and thinking about timing, someone finishing a passage quickly does not necessarily mean that they are accurate and all the answers are correct. I'm sure you all know this. Many students will rush through the psych-soc section, but high scorers learn to slow down, especially on tricky wording, to really avoid careless mistakes. It's okay for you to spend more time in one passage than another, because usually it should average out. Next, not every question deserves equal time, as I said. Some questions can take you like 20 seconds, while others require deeper analyses. And so knowing the difference between which questions require more time can really help you boost your efficiency during the test. And then strategic skipping can really save you time. So instead of getting stuck on a question or a passage that is really fluxing you, you can move on, flag it, and come back. That way you can complete as quickly the other questions as possible, and then come back to the time-consuming questions later. What that also helps you do, besides saving time, is that you kind of in the back of your mind have had more time to think about those confusing questions that can come back to it. So it helps you save time, and it kind of gives you some more time to think. Okay, now we're meant here to go through questions. I actually don't have the, let me see if it's on here now, the question bank, so I might have to pull those up.
Sorry, those might not have loaded into this presentation.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, as we're looking for materials, you guys can ask any questions you have in the chat. That way we can use this time as well as we can.
Yeah, let me know if there's anything I can do to help.
Yeah, there's like usually like a PDF file with like practice questions from Inspire, but I'm not sure if I can pop that up pretty quickly.
That's my favorite part, going through the questions and the passages and seeing how you pull out the key information from those passages. I think that especially so, like I mentioned before, I am meeting with students all day long about their MCAT prep or their med school application or their med school profile. And so something I see come up a lot is students that are struggling with reading comprehension. And so that not only affects their psych soc section, but their car section as well, because of the length of the passages and the stamina to get through the passage lengths, pulling out that key information. So I know that's one question that I wanted to ask you at the end from all the students that I hear that from, as they may be excelling in more mathematical based questions, but they're always looking for strategies on how to increase their reading comprehension skills. And if there's anything there that you found particularly helpful.
Yeah, I think the best way to improve any of those skills is to drill questions. And I think the general understanding of drilling questions is to do as many questions as possible, but truly the best way to approach any section is actually to do the questions, get them wrong, and review the answers, or do the questions, get them right, and review the answers. Because it's the answers that'll help you really switch and hone and narrow down and perfect your thinking process to make it as similar to the exam as possible. So it's truly the process of reviewing both the correct and the incorrect answers that will help you narrow down your thought process and make it as similar to what the test takers are thinking as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy. And a lot of students have found that's really the best part of one-on-one tutoring, is you have that second set of eyes with you, and they're watching how you're approaching the questions, how you're pulling that information, how you're getting your answers. So then if the question is wrong, they're able to really sit down and say, I would have approached it this way. I would have thought about it this way. What's another way that we could have gotten to this answer? So it can just help you get there a little quicker, or give you that different viewpoint than if you're sitting and studying on your own and trying to review every question on your own. I know that that's really what they like having their tutors support with.
Yeah. So here is, I can share my screen now. I can just give everyone a chance to read this passage, and we can sort of practice going through a practice passage, essentially. Let me see if I can pop open here. It's a bit of a read, but we can work through it together. Okay, so here it is. It should be passage 4. Let me make sure it's visible for everybody. Okay. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. And here is some of the content that can make psych-social a little bit more daunting. It's interpreting, it's data reading. So here's more of that passage. I'm going to scroll down a little bit to give you guys more to read. I'm going to scroll down a little bit more. Okay. I know it's kind of hard to put everything together because they're on separate pages, But these are the two questions I sort of want us to think about. One of them is like a discrete definition question, so number 21. I'll give you guys time to read that, and then you can put what you think is the answer in the chat. And please let me know if you want me to scroll up or scroll back down so you can see better. But I'd love to hear y'all's answers for what you think the first one is. And I can scroll back up or maybe zoom out if I can make it easier for you to read the other sections. I'll scroll up a little bit, give you guys some more time to read sections. So the first question is cultural lag may be accurately defined as, and then A is the delay in integrating novel technologies into the current cultural norms, time it takes for foreigners to immigrate or immigrants to adapt to cultural norms in dominant society, period between experiencing foreign cultural norms for the first time and experiencing an interior disturbance as a result, and successful though lengthy process of spreading cultural norms throughout a society. Any answers or any thoughts? I've got two answers. Awesome. So someone said C. Oh, awesome. And someone has A as the answer. Let me ask this. Why? Why did you pick your answer? What makes you answer the way that you did?
I was gonna say, Leah, do you want to share in the chat why you chose answer A?
Oh, here we are.
She said, "This is honestly an educated guess. I'm not familiar with that term yet." Leah, thank you, because I guessed C, and I have not taken the MCAT. I'm not an MCAT tutor like our expert panelist here. But I just wanted to read through the passage and try my luck and made an educated guess as well. So
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, I mean, that's one of the things and the great things about taking these practice tests is that it points you towards the vocabulary that you need to know or want to look up. So there's like a document that floats around. It's like a 30-page psych soc document that has the base explanations for what these terms are. And so there's certain layers to the types of questions that the MCAT will ask, but this can be seen as like a first or second layer question, which is essentially it's asking you, one, what is the definition of this term and how is it sort of applicable to this passage? So in general, and this is me teaching a very specific point, but just I'll teach the point specifically, then we can zoom out later. But a cultural lag is essentially the time or the time between when like non-material cultural things like values, beliefs, the time between when that comes to adapt and meet with material cultural things like technology and inventions. So if you're thinking about cultural norms and cultural technology, the most likely answer would be A. You are correct, those two things. But right, to really understand what the question is asking, you would have to know what the term means, right? So that's a first layer question. The MCAT will go further in and ask sometimes second or third layer questions, and they want you essentially to know, if you know the definition of this term, how is it applied in this context, one, or two, if you know the definition of this term, how is it different from another term or context? Let me see if I can cherry pick another question that we can go into.
Nice
Here,
job,
another one.
Leah.
Yeah, nice job, Leah. That was wonderful. For educated guesses, very correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is like a second layer question, right? So which of the following is the best indicator of successful assimilation?
We got a couple guesses.
Awesome. Let me hop to the chat. C and D. And can you guys tell me why? Like, what drives your decision? What do you know about assimilation? What are your thoughts about assimilation and then the passage?
I'm sure they're just typing their answers in the chat, so no problem.
No problem. Yeah.
Leah said, I think C is the answer choice that most accurately represents full adaptation.
Anyone else? I know there's another answer choice in the chat. Angel, you pick D. Do you have a thought process, or what's your thought process for your selection of D?
She said, I think D because when you assimilate, you are adopting, but she's not sure.
Okay. These are great answers. Thank you both for offering up like your thought process.
Yeah.
So again, right, the good thing and the cool thing about reviewing is that you not only know the right answer and why it's the right answer, but what the wrong answer is and why it's the wrong answer, or why an answer could be tricky. So the first base thing to understand is what assimilation is. And assimilation, right, as a definition, is a process by which someone who is not originally from a society or a culture gradually adapts or adopts the standards of values to traditions of that new society. So, for example, I'm from Nigeria, and then I assimilated into the US and sort of adopted the culture, the values, and the habits of Americans. So answer C would be the best marker for that. Because it shows, compared to the others, shows someone expressing empathy with the same mannerisms as those in the same society. I mean, the cool thing, the reason I really enjoy reading or using the Inspire Advantage work, as with many of the like AMCAT review materials, is that our resource not only gives you the correct answer, but also gives you an explanation for why the wrong answer can be tricky and the wrong answer. So I think I want to, let me see if I can share that page to you guys, so you can also sort of get a sense of like using the Inspira MCAT practice test to its full capacity. So if you were, for example, to use this resource, right, it would tell you answer C is correct. We sort of reviewed why answer C is correct. But then we also talk about like why the other ones are incorrect. So I'll just give you guys a chance to read this, but it kind of goes through some of the other answer choices as well. And I'll sort of scroll so you can get a chance to look at it. It just gives you a detail for answers A and B, but I wanted us to be able to appreciate this resource. And no problem, Angel. Awesome, awesome. So I'm going to stop sharing this. The resources available on the Inspira website. I wanted to see if there are any more slides for us to go through. I know we just went through 2 questions, but I also want to give time for like a Q&A if you guys have any questions about the Psych section or the MCAT in general or Inspira resources. Happy to answer those as well.
Yeah, feel free to drop any questions in the chat. It can be on the psychology, sociology section specifically, if it's general MCAT questions. I'd love to know also, Leah and Angel, when you're hoping to take the MCAT for the first time, if it's coming up this year for you or next, or if you've already taken it. So feel free to fill us in. Did you say you did want me to go through to the next slides?
Oh, yes, please. Yes, please. Oh. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, this is just a feedback slide as well. So we put on these webinars with our Inspira Advantage tutors, our Inspira Advantage counselors. We put them on weekly, and we're usually choosing our topics based on your feedback. So if there's a particular topic that you would love to hear about, learn about, discuss more with our tutors and counselors, please share your thoughts and feedback on the webinars, and feel free to make suggestions, because we're always looking for, the next topic we can connect with you on. And you can scan that code. It will just pull up a quick survey. We really appreciate it. And Leah did have a question in the chat. Oh, and she did join a little late. That's no problem, Leah. And you will get the full recording in your email too, so you can always catch up. But she was wondering like how you're going about the content review for the Psych section.
Yeah, so there is so most people, just like to start, would need some familiarity with the psychology and sociology content. Same as the other sections. Some people get that exposure through classes, so they take psychology, sociology classes. There's also like a document of review terms that's available online. I think it's like a 30-page or 10-page review document. But I think the crux and the key thing that for active review is doing questions. And when I tell people to do questions, I don't just mean like run through, pick an answer and move on, but go through the process of reviewing the question. Why did you pick it? Why this answer is the right answer, and why these wrong answers are the wrong answers, or why they can be tricky answers, and what was the MCAT or the test writers, what were they thinking when they were putting these group of answer choices together? Because I think when you do that repeatedly, it gives you a better sense of how the test writers are thinking, and then you can mimic that. So the short answer is to drill down and do more questions. But the nuance of that is really it's less of doing questions and more of reviewing the questions and being very intentional about how you review. But just like to get content knowledge in, you can read the either review materials that are available, the 30-page document that circulates around online. But truly, I think most people will find out that like yes, I read this term 2 weeks ago, but I don't remember it because you really haven't been tasked to utilize it or think about it critically. And it's when you're doing those questions that you then actively utilize that content.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Of course.
Did anyone else want to drop their questions in the chat? And I would love to know, just from your point of view, what was one of the biggest challenges that you personally faced throughout your MCAT prep, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is that we all learn socially, right? So we're used to going to class, talking with friends, or even being lectured at. And I think MCAT studying can be very socially isolating, and like it has to be a lot of like internal motivation and internal drive. So for me, what was hard was learning like when in this day am I most productive, and when is in this day am I going to be assimilating and thinking about all the information that I've just learned, and then how to make sure that I'm studying during that time, because studying is not the most fun thing to do sometimes. And so just creating a schedule for myself that I could really keep up with, and then giving myself grace if I wanted to binge Netflix the next day, then that's okay. I studied the day before. So I think that was like the hardest. It wasn't like the content specifically, because I think every student is like primed to some degree to learn what they need to learn to get what they need. But sometimes it's like learning all of that stuff in the context of isolation can make it hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it can definitely be hard. And I really liked how you touched in the beginning on taking it past the content review, because I see a lot of students come to us for tutoring. They've already sunk months of time into their content review and their score is stuck. So they're ready to go into that strategy and application of the knowledge, and take it that one step further. So I love how you talked about that in the beginning as well. That's so important.
For sure. Like the difference between passive and active learning and passive and active reading is that when you're being asked questions, then you can really understand where your deficits are, and then practice learning that content and applying that content. So active learning is super, super, super key. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions, whether it's about the test as a whole or this section specifically, or would you like to share, where you are in your test prep? Leah also said, what are some tips for effectively reviewing the practice full length? That's a great question.
Great question. I count them as essentially their own day, right? Because you probably spent 7 hours sitting down just taking that test. And now you must not just reread those questions, but then you have to read the wrong questions and their explanation. So I usually will dedicate a day to it to review. And when I'm reviewing, I'm looking for things. Firstly, when I'm reading this question again, what was I thinking at that time? What made me pick this answer? And then what made the test writers pick this answer? If it was the same right answer, were we thinking the same thing? Yes or no? And if not, why did I pick this answer? Why was it wrong? And then how can I not repeat this in the future? And sometimes writing that down, like this is why I got it wrong. And then you might start learning and noticing the pattern. Like for these types of questions, I tend to pick this answer when I shouldn't. Or for these types of questions, I forget to remember this term or like this key idea, and that's why I miss it. So not only, what is the right answer? What's the wrong answers? Why are they right? Why are they wrong? But what am I thinking? What am I doing that I need to change? And if you can document that as well, again, it's going to take a long time. I usually give myself a full day to do this. Then you can notice patterns in your own test taking strategies, and then you can augment those things. So that's what I think for effective reviewing is like being very nitpicky about like, yes, it's the right answer, but why did I pick it? And why do they say it's correct? Yeah, it definitely it can take days. You're so right, Leah. Also, learning to be efficient with your time, right, is also important. So I cap myself at the 24 hours, and I really hustle and make sure I get that done within that day.
Yeah, that's great. Right. Thank you guys so much for your questions, participating in our practice questions as well. Um, you'll also see right on our website all of our past webinars up there, and all of those webinars are on our YouTube channel too. So we also have MCAT workshops on each of the sections of the MCAT individually. So if you're catching our Psych Soc one today, but you're hoping to catch another section, it's either coming up next week or, we already have that video ready for you. Again, if you'd really like to just chat one-on-one with where you're at in your journey, especially for studying, please feel free to send us an email or just book a free consultation on our calendar. Would love to chat with you. And then right on our website too, we have so many tools. We have practice tests, practice questions, MCAT pop quiz, guides to each section, really helpful study tips for the MCAT. So I would love to share those with you. But thank you everybody so much for joining us. It was really nice to see all of you. And again, this recording will go to your inbox. So if you missed a part or just want to watch it back, you should have that in about a day or two. All right. Well, thank you so much, Louise. It was so nice having you here with us. Thanks for sharing all of your tips. And I hope everybody has a great night. We'll see you on the next webinar.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Bye, everybody.